loyalty described as, do you care? And I care, and that's why I'm on this show. Comes a time, here we go.
I'm a sucker for Oteil, man. I saw that same feeling that I have, that would he filled a void that I didn't even know existed.
It feels so good, too, as Ben said, to try to do something about an issue as opposed to complaining.
If you can't help, don't hurt.
If we could just all get out there and throw cream puffs at each other, maybe things, instead of bullets and angry words, it would be better.
When you stop laughing, you stop living.
There's a worldwide surge in interest in mushrooms.
It was deep, man.
It's not that TM makes your mind quiet down there. It already is. We're just stuck up here. We've lost access.
Jumpin' Jack Flash came out by the Stones. So I thought, all right, perfect, man. I'm gonna drive. And I started driving through the neighborhood, and I got a text from Mick Jagger.
People saying that, what we do is non-essential. Well, playing those few gigs that you saw me at felt pretty essential to me.
It wasn't like they were clapping from here. It was they were clapping from here.
My view of things is that death is the last and best reward for a life well lived.
Like it's the strangest of places if you look at it right,
If you're liking what you're hearing, head on over to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get your bus pass for an extra episode every week.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comes a Time. That's Oteil.
And that's Mike. And we had a good one today. Man, the guy that's building the mini wall of sound. How do you pronounce it, Mike?
Anthony Coscia.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that. Coscia. I think it's Coscia. At Mini Wall of Sound on Instagram. And I don't remember how to say the French version on Facebook.
The Petite Mer de something. It's the mini wall of sound in French on Facebook.
What an amazing project. And I mean, it's interesting to hear how it came out of the pandemic. Again. Something that a positive thing came out of the pandemic.
Yeah, he's got a unique spirit. Definitely got that Grateful Dead spirit to even try to take it on, because he was like, one of the coolest things that he said was, I actually, though he obviously did a lot of research, he was like, I didn't want to do too much. I kind of wanted to find my way through all the problems and kind of arrive at it the same way they did.
Yeah.
Which he did. And,
which is how, if you think about how the music has become, every single state has their Dead cover band or their, whatever. It's all that Dead spirit, just kind of people go at it their own way, take their own path. And it's really awesome that he's doing this endeavor. God, I can't wait to see, I don't want to, this is one I don't want to give any spoiler
Me
alerts.
too. I was like, there's so much stuff I want to say. And I'm like,
we'll just get right to it. Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. And you guys could support him at the end of the episode. He announces where, so check it all out. And, wow. Yeah. This could be an interesting, be a step in a whole other, well, we'll just let you guys listen.
I hope he gets away with his plans. Big long-term dream. And I'm going to see if I can help him do it.
Nice.
Hopefully we all can.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Anthony. And thanks everyone for listening. We're here on Osiris, home to so many great podcasts. You can go to osirispod.com, check them out. And we're on Patreon, patreon.com/comesatimepod for a bonus episode each week. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. All right, Anthony, thanks for joining us today. You are the creator of the Mini Wall of Sound. This is interesting. I've been seeing a lot of stuff online about this.
Hey, real quick,
been a couple years in the making.
What is your origin story with the Grateful Dead?
Oh boy, I think probably typical. I mean, college in 1987, I think, was my first introduction. I think the first tapes that a roommate had given me were Cornell, obviously, and Maple's Pavilion from '73. And, I think it was a very, very slippery slope from that point on. I was hooked and started seeing the Dead in '88 and stopped in '90. One show in '94 was my last show.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty quick.
Before we go on, can we do one thing? Can we turn your camera horizontal? Because it'll fill in the screen, I think.
Yeah. Let me just so I can balance. Okay. Yeah. There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
There it is.
So you got on the bus in college and that was it.
Yeah. And, did the college thing, did as many tours as I could while I was in school. Took quite a break, graduated from college, you get a job and start having a family, and things kind of dissipated for a while there. And then really started getting back into the music more when I got into my, later 30s. And, kind of when you had more time. I mean, it's really just the way it goes.
Nice.
And what do you do for a job, for a living?
And my day job is I make instruments. I make guitars, very specific to Grateful Dead musicians. So I all kind of Alembic inspired or, Irwin inspired, Bean inspired. And I make speaker cabinets that are full sized. So, the wall project was kind of a natural extension of that anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're a luthier too. That's super cool.
Yep. This was, probably a fourth career for me, but it quickly went from being a hobby to a part-time business to a most-time business to an all-time business. Wow. And now it's back to being split with this and the wall projects, which is becoming bigger and bigger.
So what made you want to bite off something so huge as replicating the wall of sound?
It's honestly, it's kind of shocking no one's ever done it since then. It's such this piece of the lore of the Dead that you would think somebody would have wanted to at least do this on a scale level. So, for me, I build, 100 speaker cabinets a year. So that's a third of the wall right there that's sitting in my shop every year. And it's like, damn, I should really just start keeping these cabinets and start building the wall. So, the mini wall was more of a, it's COVID. I've got leftover material. Now's a good time to test the waters and see if people would be interested in even following a project like that, which clearly they were.
Yet another thing that COVID made possible.
Yeah. Yes, and a lot of people rediscovered their creative side that didn't do it for years. So it's not all negative things.
So you're actually using it like you're putting it out there and firing it up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there have been 1, 2, 3. I'm on the 5th version of the wall now. So the first one was tiny. I mean, literally, to give you a sense, this is what would have been a JBL D120, a 12-inch speaker. So this is, the first one was an 88-cent, Parts Express, made in China 1-watt speaker. And, there were 400 speakers that were that size and, this size, little cell phone speakers. And, it was really meant more as almost a sculpture, and the concept that I could actually get sound out of it was a bonus, but it sounded surprisingly good for what it was. The quarter scale, which is the one that's complete now that I've had at the Capitol Theater and toured around with, that's a serious sound system. And it'll put 120 decibels into a 400-person room in crystal clear without really pushing it. And it's still only 10 feet tall by 14 feet wide.
Man, we gotta get this thing on an O'Teal and Friends gig. The Cap with Melvin.
To play through it. And it does function sort of like the wall of sound. It's a little bit of a hybrid, but you can plug instruments in and have each person go through their own channels. But once you put a drum kit and 5 musicians in front of it, it's kind of like looking at Spinal Tap, with Stonehenge. It's, even though it's really amazing and sounds great, it just doesn't. The scale doesn't work.
Wasn't Owsley,
the current project's a whole other beast, though.
Owsley's original plan with that was to be able to hear the music a mile away, right?
Yeah, and I don't doubt at all that was the case. I mean, you do the math, and you might not have listened to and danced to music at a mile away, but certainly at a quarter mile away, you're going to hear what's going on. It's it's a very linear system. So if you're in its path, you're going to hear it.
Jeez.
Did you ever get to meet Owsley?
Nope. So I guess when did he move to Australia? I can't even remember.
Oh, yeah.
It was
that's right.
Many years ago, but he would have been a great resource. I mean, I've certainly talked to a lot of people that, have had lots of information, but there is no one person out there that knows everything about the wall. And so you kind of have to dig around and get little bits and pieces from different people.
Yeah. So what was that search like? Like, where did you start to try to do that research? Or who did you start with, I guess I should say?
Well, initially I started with just let's scale this thing to a model, and that's pretty easy to do. There's enough photographs out there where I know the size of a JBL, D140 or something. I can scale it off and come up with all the dimensions. And then when it comes to some of the other things, I mean, people like Rick Turner was a big help. Richie Petzner, who did a lot of those iconic photographs and was also a roadie at the time, also had a lot of good information. And just a lot of people like me who have been digging into this for years have gathered a lot of information or own individual components to the wall. So it's just really aggregating all that stuff and starting to assemble it.
I remember in one of the early books, maybe it was Paul Grushkin's book, Deadheads, there was a fold-out drawing, like a schematic drawing.
Yeah.
2 pages full with the Ouroboros in the middle of it, the serpent eating its own tail of the wall. And it was almost kind of like a rough sketched blueprint.
Yeah, and it shows underneath each column what the column represented too.
Yes, exactly.
And trust me, that was my wallpaper for a long time. I mean, it's a great quick reference guide to what's what. And now, of course, it's ingrained in my mind and I can tell you what every single speaker did. But, that was a perfect scale drawing of, the ultimate 1974 wall.
Oh,
so,
wow.
It's a lot of people have that poster on their wall.
Yeah. From the minute I saw that you were doing this, I thought about that picture and I kind of remember staring at that. And I'm not at all as mechanically or speaker cabinetly inclined as you are. So I just remember looking at it going, look, we've talked about to Parrish a couple times and I just still don't know how the hell they moved that thing night after night after, you know what I mean? That's just mind blowing that was a physical feat.
Yeah, I think
that was
and
accomplished.
That's what some people don't really understand about the project is, you could do this project as a monument to the wall or to the dead or to the roadies. But really, it's more of a, if you were to try to think of what would be this physical manifestation of what the ethos of the dead is, it's the wall of sound. It's just, here you have this huge dysfunctional family that somehow managed to do something that was massive, just logistically a nightmare, technically groundbreaking, and somehow they were able to pull this off. And obviously it imploded at some point, but, I think the whole concept that they really didn't care what it took or what it cost or what the ultimate cost of the band would be. It's well, we got to do it because we just want to put out the best they can. And so there was no commercial logic to it,
Yes, there's no commercial and no logic
or physical.
That's a lot of. It's that way in a lot of parts.
There were so many things they could have done. Yeah. So and I can tell you, even on a small scale, if they have 15 people assembling a wall of sound, 4 people working on my half-scale wall of sound is going to take just as much time, and you got to lug just as many speakers and set up just as much scaffolding. So it's. You get a very quick sense for what they went through on a smaller scale.
What was the actual...
this half scale is not small. It's 20 feet tall.
Yeah.
So what were the actual dimensions of the original?
It's funny because when you listen to interviews, whether it's with Big Steve or other people, the dimensions, it's like the fish was this big, I've heard it was 100 feet wide and it was 40 feet tall. When the reality is that the tallest column of speakers was right around 30 feet tall. The wall itself was probably 60 feet wide if you look at speaker to speaker, left to right. The stage was much bigger. But, it was still, it's 3 stories tall by, 4 stories wide. And, I think if you look at it, compared to some of the stage setups for modern concerts, I think by today's standards, we probably look at it and go, oh, it looks cute, But it's just the sheer amount of speakers with no, like, you look at a line array, you look right past it. You know, with the wall, there's no looking past it. It's everything behind the band.
I love That's the part that scares me the most. Is as much as I would love to play through it, when I first saw it, I was like, why in the hell did they put it behind the band? Like, you're going to go deaf in like 3 nights. Like, it must have. But
well, you know, I think there's some valid points there, but there's some things that you have to keep in mind is, all right, you're playing the bass. You've got 36 15-inch speakers, but you're really only standing in front of 4 of them, you know? So the rest of them are above you, below you. And so every musician is still not getting that full effect. That said, yes. you've probably stood in front of a 12-inch JBL with 200 watts going through it. It's ear piercing. So, I'm sure the stage volume was loud, but I don't think it was as bad as people would make it out to be. So I can walk up to my quarter scale, put my ear to it and go, yeah, that's loud. And it's not till I stand back 10 feet and I go, shit, that's really loud.
Oh,
because you're not getting that full field.
Yes, it takes time. The sound throws a certain distance, so farther back. Yeah, that's true.
You're not hearing everything. And so you find that the volume or the perceived loudness of the wall doesn't drop off like in a normal loudspeaker where every time you double the distance, you lose X number of decibels. It drops off about half as much with the line array. So the further back you go, up until maybe 50 or 60 feet, it doesn't decline in volume a lot. And then after that, it kind of does it more traditionally.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So I think you said something earlier that makes me think that I wasn't clear on how the wall is set up. Were you saying that, like, in this section of the wall would be fill, this section of the wall would be, it's like everybody.
I mean, the real simple way to look at it is, think back when you were a kid and you had a little garage band. You showed up at the garage with your 1x15 bass amp. The only difference is that Phil has a 36x15 combo amp. I mean, there was nothing between him. He went from his bass into 2 Alembic F2Bs, into 4 Macintosh MC2300s, and right into his speakers. There's no one at a soundboard saying, hey, Phil, we got to turn you down or tweak you. It was just a huge combo amp to him. And the same for every member of the band.
He had that bass that had every knob. Like, can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, he had Mission Control, which Rick Turner, built for him, which, I'm building this half scale wall with the intent that it is set up to run the quad bass, where it was really a 6-way system where you could run it in, you could have every string mapped to 9 of the 36 speakers, or you could run it in just all of them going to all of them.
Bunch of mad scientists, dude.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people think that Phil used that all the time, but he didn't. I think he used it for, probably for some real heavy bass jams, or when he was doing, C-Stone stuff, where it was just crazy feedback and stuff. But when it comes to just regular songs, he was just playing like a standard bass. But the concept is pretty wild.
Sure
so, I designed the second one to make sure that, we could plug Mission Control right into it and have it play exactly like it would have through the wall.
Wow, shit.
Man, what a crazy cool thing.
They built that thing before computers, you know what I mean? That's the thing that I think about too with that is, like, I imagine, like, nowadays if a band, you have an iPad and you look and you're like, oh, this is faulty, or this is like, this needs tweaking. You have like a control panel, digitally. If something fried during a show, they just they had to know it. It was like only that one crew could figure that out,
And they blew up a lot of speakers as a result. So what I've been trying to do, at least up through this point, is do sort of a hybrid where, my goal is to use newer technology wherever it makes the system more safe, more scalable, and maybe a little bit more control where you can't blow up half the wall. But I want the perception to be that, from a musician's perspective, that when they plug in, it should be no different. They should feel like they're 100% autonomous control over their own speakers, just like they're in the garage. So, I've done that where now everyone's going to, may go through the soundboard just to route them to their speakers. And I can set limits on certain things. But I can also now take this half scale wall. Let's say that you want to run a band through it that's not the Dead. And they don't like playing with, Fender and JBL speakers. They like their Marshalls and Celestials. Well, we can set up a bunch of Kemper profiling rigs, and now they can dial in exactly what they want, still be playing just through their own speakers, but not have to sound exactly like one tone, path or another.
Can you explain what tempered profiling is?
There's this a Kemper profiler, and there's a lot of brands of these things out there. But nowadays, because a lot of musicians end up rather than going through their amp, they can go direct to the soundboard and then to the PA. So these profilers simply are essentially computers that say, "Hey, I want this to mimic a Fender Twin Reverb preamp and mimic a Macintosh power amp and mimic a JBL D120 speaker," and do an admirable job of mimicking that without ever having to have an amplifier on the stage. It can go right through the soundboard.
So it's amp modeling, basically, or it's
amp,
modeling.
speaker, cabinet modeling. So I'm sort of using it differently in that I'm not going to be putting that stuff into a PA system. I'm basically taking it from the musician, kind of shaping it the way we want, and then giving it right back to the musician in their speakers only. So from them, they don't really know that the signal path is going through the soundboard and all that. They just know that what's coming out is what they expect it to sound like. At least that's the plan and the goal.
Wow. That's cool. What was the most surprising thing that you found about the wall of sound in your research about it? Like from having to go, okay, I'm going to actually replicate this.
I wouldn't say there was, you just assume it's going to be a pain in the ass to deal with. And there's going to be all these things that are going to go wrong, and everything that you would assume is true. I'll tell you something that really I didn't even think about until I went back and really examined pictures is the first time we tested out this half scale, we tested out just Phil's speakers. So these are 18, in this case, 18 1x8s in a stack, and then another stack of 18 next to it. When you stack up 18 feet tall of speakers, I don't care how well made those cabinets are, they're not all square. So if they're up by a 32nd of an inch, you get up 6 feet in the air and the tower's now leaning 3 inches and the whole thing's moving. So you go back and look at pictures, and they had that same problem. You could see little shims everywhere because they had to shim the speakers as they went up. And it's pretty terrifying being 18 feet in the air with all these speakers above you. And you're like, oh shit, I probably should have thought about leveling this.
Yeah, like shims are going to keep me from dying.
That's it.
Think about some of those outdoor,
like
just playing in like a fairground or something with like crazy winds blowing behind them, maybe a tapestry between them and the wind.
Yeah. I'm blown away that they took this thing outdoors. You can't control wind. This thing is a giant sail. And, I'm sure by today's codes, OSHA would probably never let them do the wall in that format. But, I can tell you that, one of the hardest things doing at scale, even half scale, is I need real scaffolding to lash this stuff down. But if I use real scaffolding, the stuff's going to look huge and stupid. So when I have to fabricate all this half scale, scaffolding, that while it theoretically can hold my weight, I can't use it as a platform to set things up. I got to set up a rolling scaffold behind the scaffold that I can actually use just to assemble things.
So scaffold to scaffold.
Yeah. It's honestly a lot of doing a scale version is, I think, much more difficult than just doing the full scale. The full scale has obvious, constraints like weight, space, things like that.
OSHA.
I just find new ones with the scale one every day. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. I like the little metal clips that go on the speakers. Well, I got to now fabricate all those in tiny scale, and it's the thing is it. When I started this out, and I maintained this all the way through, is there's several things about the wall that people are attracted to. Obviously, the sound is one of them. The mystique is another one. But if it doesn't look like the wall, it doesn't matter how good it sounds. Yeah. So I've probably spent, me and my volunteers have probably spent 24 hours over the last 2 years doing nothing but coloring in dust caps on speakers silver, because the smaller speakers don't come with aluminum dust caps. But if they're not silver, there's someone out there that's looking at it, and I'll get like 5 emails. hey, how come the third speaker down on the left, the baffle of the speaker is white and not black? I have to explain to them, hey, sometimes they broke one, they needed one quickly, and they ran out of paint. So I've included a certain number of speaker baffles that are white and not black,
Amazing.
There's fanatical people out there that I think put me to shame.
No,
too.
Dead fans?
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, right. We've mastered the art of finding a hair that's been split 4 ways and then trying to find ways to split it, 4 more ways. And
wow.
But I had comments like on this initial model that was really a toy. I made all the dual microphones on these little scale microphones that were like 8 inches tall. And I used humbucker screws as the microphones. And then I dipped the ends of the humbucker screws in black paint so they looked like they had windscreens on them. And I swear I had people calling me and saying, really impressive that you remember the foam windscreens on the microphones.
They were going to nail you on that one.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, even with this quarter scale one, if you sit in the room, you turn all the lights off and you're 15 feet away, it's going to look like you're looking at the wall of sound if you were 50 feet away. Once you lose all that frame of reference around you of things like couches and people, you can actually have that experience of the wall of sound without it being full scale.
Wow.
Can you imagine being there for the real thing? And they were tripping really hard. Like that had to be like totally unforgettable.
Yeah.
Because it sounded amazing.
Yep.
But then the whole thing, like when you're dosed, just like
and just the era of those tunes, like a heavy like fill bomb going into the other one, or that first like D of a Morning Dew, or whatever it may be.
First D of Shakedown.
Boom. Yeah, seriously. What's up, everybody? This is Mike, and today's show is sponsored by Sunset Lake CBD, a Vermont hemp farm crafting affordable CBD products designed to help with stress and sleep without breaking the bank.
Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located just outside of one of our favorite places, Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. We had them on the podcast. In 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD.
And Sunset Lake CBD crafts products with hemp grown on their family farm and ships them directly to the customer, cutting out all the cost associated with getting on the shelves at stores. They have CBD products for every occasion and offer tinctures, salves, edibles, coffee, smokables, and even for that anxious dog of yours, they have pet products.
Ooh, I need to get some for my dog that's barking all the time. But I'll tell you this, I use these. The Sour Bears.
So good.
They are CBD gummies. I literally, no joke, I take these every night. They help me sleep. And it's almost bedtime.
Yep. And I still, as said it before, I'll say it again. You go to a long show, you come home, my 42-year-old ankles are not what they used to be. And I rub that salve all over them and put them up, enjoy a nice cocktail, and just let it ooze right into those sore bones. And you know what, folks? All you Comes a Time fans, if you check them out at sunsetlakecbd.com and use promo code TIME, T-I-M-E, you'll get 20% off all products. That's sunsetlakecbd.com. Use promo code TIME, 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer-owned, Vermont-grown. Thank you.
Get you some.
It had to have something to do with the wall. The fact that, yes, while doing all this under the influence of lots of drugs, to have an entire year where I don't know that I've heard a single bad show from the Wall of Sound era. I mean, every show is just tight unless they didn't want it to be tight. So how could you pull that off unless the wall was feeding you all the information you needed to do your best, And
so what were the years? What were the years that the wall actually was?
That's 74.
Oh, so that's before Shakedown,
That's it.
right?
Yeah, so like 72, 73, they were starting to build components. So they would say that Maples Pavilion was the first wall show, but it wasn't the wall that you and I know. All the parts were on stage, but they weren't set up the way that we're used to. So, the first wall of sound was Cow Palace in 74. And the last show was, I don't remember the last show, whether it was Winterland or something, because it was in 74 as well.
Wow. It's interesting during the Grateful Dead movie, there's a piece when they're at sound check and Jerry's kind of standing at the wall and they're all like on their harnesses going up and he's pointing up and he's like, and you could see that he's kind of asking something of them, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but he's like, that would be the hippest if we could do that, whatever. And they just were kind of like, all right, cool. And whatever he was asking, they did. And, but it was so interesting just to see the all hands on deck.
Yeah. Well, I think if there was a single defining moment for me that got me hooked on the wall of sound in general, it was from the Grateful Dead movie as well. And it's when Phil's playing with Mission Control and he's just screwing around. And he's like,
the feedback from the camera
over here. And I'm like, oh man, this guy is totally geeking out over this. And it just was like, you could tell that this wasn't just, hey, here's your new PA system, go play around with it. No. They were really into it. And I'm sure they didn't show the parts where they were cursing it. And I'm sure there were a lot of those, but that hooked me on the whole concept.
Have you gotten to interact with any of the original members? Have they gotten to see it? And
no, I'm sure they've seen it online and things like that. I know when we had it at the Capitol, when Phil returned to the Cap last year, it was right in the middle of COVID. So Phil was either on the bus or on the stage, but you had Jimmy Herring came out and saw it. I think the first words out of his mouth were something like, holy shit. And Rob Baracco came out. And I think it's pretty well known about, but I certainly love to see it. But I think I'd rather wait now because I'm within probably 6 or 8 weeks of finishing the half scale. And this is something big enough to put in a 2,000 seat arena, easily. It's 50 plus thousand watts. It's 20 feet tall and 30 feet wide. So, this one was designed for gigging versus for playing music. But the thing that I like about having got this technology built in is if someone said to me, hey, the only multi-track recordings from the Wall of Sound were from the Winterland, from the movie. If someone gave me those multi-tracks, I could play them back through the half-scale wall and send every track to the speakers they would have played out of. And you could actually hear, that same show played exactly as it would, and you'd hear it as you would have heard it then. Which I just think would be the bee's knees.
Yeah, have a video screen.
Yeah.
And then have the sound come through, get synced up and have the sound, dude.
Yeah. And you hear Jerry coming out of Jerry. You hear Phil coming out of just his. And you hear it exactly as you would have heard it if you were there. And fortunately with digital mixers and, all the DAWs that are out there, you can take those multi-tracks and just point them where you want them to go.
Dude, that's bananas.
I might have to microdose for that one, bro.
Maybe that's a macro day.
That would be so cool. Yeah.
I'd love for Parrish to see this thing.
Me too. But that's where I'm going. I'm like, I know the guy, so I'm like, let's set it up. Like, where's it? Where can we get them to come see it? Because they need to do it.
I'm hoping that by end of October, by mid-November, maybe it is 100% operational. And, I'm very fortunate that my space is about 1,500 square feet and I run out of space. I couldn't set up, a quarter of it in here. So, there's a foundation, Spread Music Now, that supports, music education initiatives. And I know the guys, and I've done some work with them in the past. And I called them up and said, hey, you guys know people involved with the arts. Do you know anyone that might be willing to donate some warehouse space for, 2 to 6 months? And they said, we just closed down a church yesterday. So I am moving into a church as we speak that has 40-foot ceilings. And while it's not big enough to really push the wall, I can set the whole thing up, get it tested out, and have people come in and, at least the people that I want to have experience see it before I have to find a bigger location for it. So I'm really hoping this fall it's ready to go, So
it's Alice's Restaurant meets the Grateful Dead movie.
Yeah.
You can have Thanksgiving at the church.
Exactly.
Well, the thing, I think it would be so cool, like if there is a venue that it could stay at for whatever amount of time, that all these bands could roll through and play through it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Phil and friends, Bob. Well, Bob probably won't want to do it because it'll be so. He won't let the.
What about you?
He won't
too?
let Don Us have that many bass cabinets. But you know, like I mean, that would be so cool. I'd love for Teal and Friends to get a crack at that J-Rad Dark Star Orchestra. I mean, you know, what a cool thing to
goal,
be able to play the venue where it's set up and have the crowd come in and. I mean, wow! I'd like to hear that bass through it, man.
And, you know, you're obviously welcome to join in anytime. You know, the half scale is really the whole purpose of this was to do a version that was fully functional and giggable. But ultimately, I'd like to see it either go to like 3 or 4 month residencies and where it then can move around, or just find a permanent home where kind of regional bands and local people can show up and actually play through the wall. But it was really done. With the primary goal being, this is my marketing piece to get funding to build the full scale wall, which is, you know, that'll start the day this is done. And what I want for that is I want somebody to work with me and rebuild the Winterland on the East Coast, because I'm on the East Coast, and have a Winterland, you know, Grateful Dead museum, Wall of Sound museum, where it's just a permanent Wall of Sound venue.
And then just build it and put it in there.
Just find an old dilapidated skating rink, just like the Winterland. And fix it up and make a Winterland East, you know, like the Fillmore East. Nope, we got the Winterland East with the Wall of Sound.
Peter Shapiro.
Hello.
I've talked to Peter about it. Yeah,
I bet you have.
I was trying to build the FOMO on this one, you know. Someone's going to do it.
No, it has. I think it's a great idea because even just the half scale one, but if you have the full one, like set up somewhere in a venue, I'm partial to the just stay in one place because moving it's such a. But if it's in one place, I think if you did that, just recreated Winterland somewhere, and then all these bands could come. Yeah, dude. Are you? Oh wow!
I've had people drive 6 hours to see the quarter scale wall. And they were glad they drove 6 hours to see it. You know, this is just the whole other thing. And, you know, but, you know, if you are in the Northeast on a tour anytime in the next, 3 to 6 months, it will be there. And you are, you know, you can show up with that instrument. And I'm trying to work on building a quad bass of my own to work with it so that we can really play with it. But, you know, I have a feeling that once this is done, getting the full scale project going is going to be easier than this one was. It's hard to get money from people to fund a model, even if it's still huge. But when people see this and they go, wow, this is real, they'll be more apt to want to be involved with the full scale recreation.
You know, you just brought something up about building a quad bass. And I wanted to ask you, like, is doing these various models, bigger, smaller, you know, or biggest to now, has that changed the way that you look at building instruments?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, the only thing is, it certainly changed what instruments I enjoy. Now, I've always been a fan of Wolf. Well, Wolf was the guitar played through the wall all the time. So how much of the tone was Wolf versus the fact that all the recordings were through the wall? It was probably a mix of both, but there's something about that. That's like the golden age of the Dead is Wolf and the wall, and Phil with the quad, and, you know, Phil with his big goofy lamb's wool, whatever strap on his bass.
I love that thing.
Such a perfect era. Yeah.
It really was. I mean, and it's funny, the parallels between 74 and now. We're building this wall in the midst of essentially a gas crisis. I mean, that's what bankrupted the wall practically, is they had all these semis trucking around the country in the middle of a time when we were waiting online on alternate days to buy gas. And, you know, I was paying $5 a gallon for gas the other day. So it's not that far off, only I need 4 Sprinter vans, not 4 semis.
Yeah. Jesus.
Crazy, man. Well, I really hope, I now you got my brain turning, because I remember Phil saying that, like, how could you not like, you know, this enormous, however many, the 30-foot bass cabinet? And I was like, I would be afraid to touch my bass. But now that you said, like, you're only hearing the ones right behind you. Essentially, like all the rest are blowing past you. That's got to be one hell of you got to feel like Thor. You know?
My God, yeah.
Like, wow.
That's it. And it's funny. We had a really good bass player. Dan came out when we set up all these 8-inch speakers, and he's like, he was almost like I forgot how to play music because all I wanted to do was try out different notes and chords and things just to see how they'd sound through it. Because it is he's like, I didn't want to play a song. I just wanted to do this just to see how it would sound. And It's amazing how different it is when we stack up 9 speakers by 4 versus 18 speakers by 2. Totally different sound. You would think same speakers, same wattage, same everything. But no, ranging them vertically that tall, they all start to couple together. And it totally changes how everything sounds. And that's why Phil's speakers were, 28 feet tall is, that was the length of the standing bass wave of the low E, 40 hertz. So that translates to, we got to make the cabinets 28 feet tall. That's why it's that tall. So I can't go 28 feet tall with the half scale, but once you get a little bit over half, you start to get some of those benefits of at least the speakers kind of coupling together.
Yeah. And that crew literally built a castle every time they went to a different place.
I mean,
it's just listening to in Long Strange Trip, listening to Steve talk about how it was like, they were there way before everybody else built it, set everything up, made sure everything was secure. Then the band came and sound checked, and then the band played, marathon shows then, right? And then the minute that the show was over, they started breaking down, loading, and then off to the next gig.
There's some disinformation. People thought that there were multiple walls of sound that were trucked all around the country. There was only one wall of sound. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
My Bluetooth kicked out, so I'm on the phone now. There was one wall of sound, multiple sets of scaffolding, because think about where the real effort went in. It's you got to set up a stage that's 100 feet wide by 50 feet deep, and then build all the scaffolding. So, but still, I can tell you that they were able to, from the time they started load in, 6 hours later or whatever, have everything at least physically erected. That's crazy.
And superhuman.
There's a great video out there. They took this whole thing to Europe for four venues or 3 venues, and there's some home video out there of them hoisting these speakers up there. None of this stuff would be OSHA approved. They've just got ropes tied around them. They're pulling them up with pulleys while they're standing directly below the speakers. And there's 150 cabinets before you even get to that big center, vocal array.
And then we talked with Steve about just even the old roads that they had to drive through to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on one second here. Now a call came through.
It's amazing.
If you talk to Billy about it, he was terrified because he was in the drum kit right underneath that vocal array, which weighed, I'm guessing, right around 3,000 pounds. And it's swaying in the wind. So they pulled him forward a bit, I think, so he wasn't directly under it. And, in this half scale version, it's 5 feet by 5 feet by 3 feet and weighs about 700 pounds. That's going to kill you just as easily.
Yeah. Oh,
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. Move me, man. I look up all the time, when things start getting windy and stormy. And I'm like, because there's some really big trusses.
Yeah.
Right? This happened to me in a club at some beach town. A friend of mine was a lead singer. He was a really bad alcoholic too. And he bent down, and I saw this happen. I was not on stage. I just happened to be looking at the stage. Yeah. And so you hear this bang, and I went like that. And Sam, the singer, had bent down to pick something up off the floor. And the thing was right above it.
Wow.
Where he would he would have died if he had been just standing up. He bent down at the right exact moment. And it sounded like a bomb going off. And he went straight to the bar and started drinking. It was like noon or whatever.
It's not like the wall where one speaker can fall off. If a truss comes down, everything's coming down.
I mean, the chain stopped it, but it sounded, and so whenever I'm on stage, I know it's probably going to stop way before it hits my head or what. I don't know how they have it set up. I'm sure it's safe, but I can't shake the feeling. I still look, and then I move this way. I'm going to stand right here while this thing's swinging like this, And when you think about like we lower our speakers now when storms happen, and they just sit it on the stage because they start swinging so far. Like I can't imagine the walls like with shims and rope. I'm just like Phillies.
They got rope, not chains, not cables, just rope. Every now and then, kind of looks like they were tying things off, but largely it's it's not like it's hung from a truss. It's just being held in place by its own weight. We even found that when we stacked all those speakers up, after playing it for about a half hour, you look up and the top speaker is a quarter of the way off the one below it because it's the only one without weight on top of it. So now it's like, all right, the top speaker's got to get, somehow screwed in place. Otherwise, nothing's holding it in place.
Damn. Didn't even think about that.
Yeah, well, I didn't either.
It's like what if
that kind of goes to my point. You learn these things that they probably learned all these lessons that I learned now on a larger scale, and part of me likes the fact that I'm trying to figure these things out without doing too much research, because I think you end up at the same conclusion, and it's kind of neat when you arrive at that same answer that they did on your own. It makes you feel a little less alone in it.
Yeah, that's really cool, though. I mean, it's kind of a great way to honor it, is to take that same path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
listen, they were smart people and had really brilliant people working on this, but at the same time, they were flying by the seat of their pants, And you could tell just by looking at it. If you look at 1 year's worth of wall shows, find me 2 shows where every speaker was in the same place. No, they were angling things a little different. Maybe there was one less speaker here. Maybe it's because they dropped one and broke it, or maybe it's because they were tuning it to the space. But, whatever it is, it was a constantly evolving thing, even after, let's say Cow Palace, when we all thought that was the finished version, it kept changing.
Yeah. And if you think about the venues that they played were either like fairgrounds, which were wide open, flat spaces in the middle of the country and like Tornado, alley, all the way to like Veterans Memorial Coliseum type, like minor league hockey arenas and shit.
Yeah, an 8,000 seat is what the Winterland was, I think, and that's tiny for the wall.
It must have been so loud in there. Oh my God, those
if you
places
look at
echo
Alexandra
naturally.
Palace in London. I don't know if you've ever seen that hotel.
That's the Dick's Pick 74, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one of the few Europe wall shows, and it was this arts and entertainment music complex built in the 1800s, and it had one of the largest pipe organs in Europe, and they set up the wall right in front of this pipe organ. I mean, to me, that had to be the coolest venue to set that thing up in front of, just because it looks like you're playing in a cathedral. And which is really cool because this church I'm setting up in now has a pipe organ in it. So I feel like I'm in this mini, Alexandra Palace. It's just wild.
That's so cool.
Great, man.
So the goal would be like, obviously like the big piece, like you said, we know that goal, but then this other piece, like you said, they're like a touring one. So do you feel like you'd build it custom for bands to kind of take with them? Or
if someone wanted to commission me to build a half scale one, or I didn't have to operate it, I'm all for it. The problem is it's a tough sell to a venue. I mean, I understand it. Like, the amount of money it would cost for me to bring in a half scale wall for one gig, that's going to take 3 days to do. And, for 4 guys, no one's going to give me $20,000 just to set up the PA system. But to put it in a venue for, hey, you got to pick a place in the Northeast, and you're going to have it there for 3 months, and you're going to lease it for 3 months, and you're going to promise me that any local band or regional band that wants to get their shot can find a way where, I don't care if it's the 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. slot. I want people to have this chance to experience it no matter what level they're at.
Yeah, that's cool.
Obviously, getting a DSO or getting you guys to come play would be great. But, at the half scale, I really want the normal person who's a fan and a musician to be able to come, plug in and try it out. And then after 3 months, I don't mind, taking a week off every 3 months to load it up and move it out to the Midwest and we set it up in Chicago for 3 or 4 months. Nice. I just need to find the vehicle to do that or the venues that want to commit to enough time to make it worth doing. So any direction you have in that respect I'm open.
Well, I really like your idea about the museum, like just set it up permanently in the right venue. And then everybody just can come through, perpetually, and then have the whole, I don't know, but we got to dream big, right? Because that's what they did. You know, like
it's funny. I've learned through this project. I'm not one of those people. I'm generally humble and I don't like asking for anything. And probably the biggest growth thing for me is now I just ask, because if you don't ask, you don't receive. And trust me, I give a lot back. But so far, every time I've asked for something, people have been more than willing to help. You know, I mean, I'm moving into a church this week because I asked for space.
Yeah, that's really
and
cool.
I don't take that at all for granted. But you know, this is a big project, and when you get to a full scale wall where you're talking millions of dollars, you know, you're not going to get there by just hoping someone shows up and says, "Yeah, I like your idea. I want to do it." You've got to somehow go after it and find these people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there is someone there who's super passionate and has so much money to burn. And it's just, you got to meet where they're like, and they catch the vision, and it's doable. So we're speaking it out into the universe. Ask and ye shall receive. You already got your church. Boom, let's go big. You know?
Yeah. This is awesome, man. Anthony, thank you, man. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, you have such a great spirit about this, man. I love hearing all of it, how it changed you and just everything. It's really, truly part of that Grateful Dead pioneer spirit. So thanks so much, man.
Where can everyone find you if for that are listening and watching?
Well, for following the project, it's right now it's just Facebook and Instagram. So on Instagram, they can follow me on Mini Wall of Sound. That's on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Le Petit Mur de Son, which is, and that was just a joke when I started. I'm like, I'll name it something funny, class up the joint a bit, and so I named it French, and I think Rosie McGee called me out and said that, you know, petite with an E is feminine and the wall is masculine. So I had to change that. But so Rosie says I have to change it. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But so they can follow along there. You know, when we get to the big project, I'll get a real website where anyone who's not on those platforms can go. And there's a GoFundMe. If you search for Mini Wall of Sound on GoFundMe, anyone who wants to contribute can. But yeah, I mean, this project doesn't happen with people not getting excited about it and keeping the word going, you know?
Right on, man.
I'm glad we can help do that. And I'm going to go contribute to it today. Today's my brother's birthday. So in honor of Kofi, I'm going to go put some money on the Wall of Sound. See if I have a little selfish reasoning. I want to feel what Phil felt.
Yeah.
But
no, in all honesty, so guys, cool. You know, when you're in town, you just give me a shout and I'll make it happen. Obviously, Mike, you're local, so you know you can come
we'll check it out. Yeah, but I'll plug my acoustic electric in and play a Road Jimmy or something.
It's worth it just to stand in front of it, even at that scale. It's just awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I would love to
every time.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate it.
All right, guys, let's take care.
Bless you, brother.
Thank you.